So, Karsten, please, the stage is yours. We're really looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you. Have also a presentation on screen, so maybe you want to look. I have to look at it. So, but my name is Karsten, and I'm from Greenland. I'm a medical doctor. Today I'm going to talk a little about health in Greenland. But first of all, I really want to thank you all for inviting me here. Thank you to the elders. Thank you to the hosts. Thank you to Gwen. Thank you, Christina, for also bringing me here. So this will take around 25 minutes. So I hope you stay with me. Yeah, you can see me smiling there. If you take the next slide, or can I use this? Can I use the pointer? Yes. So thank you for the charter flight. Also, um, but anyway, first of all, I'll do the Greenlandic introduction, the Galadok one first. That's who am I? You know. And then I'll take the Western part. What do I do for a living? And then I'll talk about health in Greenland today, working in Greenland, stories from the field, and some closing words. My story is from the floor. I work on the floor. So first of all, I was born in Maniitsoq in Greenland. And I'm 44 years old. My mother was from Uummannaq, and my father is from Falster in Denmark. I have two brothers who also live in Nuuk. I've been married for 16 years to Hanne, my wife, and we have a son now who is 13 years old. So what do I do? Well, my profession is that I'm a medical doctor. I finished my last exam in 2009 from Denmark, and I was pretty happy. My wife also succeeded, so I could now afford my own guitar, and we could finally come home to Greenland. So we live in Nuuk, and we work at the Dronning Hospital, or Queen Ingrid's Hospital, or as some will call it in the 50s, Sana, so like a sanatorium. Yeah. We've been working now in Greenland for 14 years. We have both taken our specialty training in Greenland in family medicine, but we do work at the internal medical department. And I work with adults, and my wife works with children. I'm just going to brag. I have my own office and my own stamp with my name on it. So while being a medical student in Denmark, I found out that there were not a lot of subjects on Greenlandic matters. So I finally found one who had done a lot of research on Greenlanders. So I did a lot of research among Greenland Inuit in Denmark and Greenland Inuit in Greenland, so I could actually come home and visit Greenland in that period, being a student in Denmark. But I continued doing research also when I came home, and it was mostly on infectious diseases and especially on what's called hepatitis B. So it's a liver disease. This is my best friend, a cup of coffee. And, being a researcher, being indigenous, coming home to Greenland, working as a doctor gave me fine opportunities to come visit different settlements, talk to families, talk to family members of patients with different diseases. So I learned a lot, and I hope they learned something too. It also brought me to Australia, to their indigenous peoples down there, and I also come to visit places with my family. So it's not just only courses and speaking, but also listening and watching and seeing. So in 2019, I got my PhD on this infectious liver diseases, And in 2020 or something, I was invited to become a part of the Lancet Commission on Arctic Health, which some of you know. And this one is called Urgently Accelerating Indigenous Health and Well-Being, the Lancet Commission on Arctic and Northern Health. And I just have to read this out loud. I think it almost sounds like, being here, but we have this shared vision. Those of us living in the Arctic have adapted to a unique environment due to a profound, intimate relationship that we have to the lands, the territory, and diverse resources. The lands, coastal seas, sea ice, and animals reflect highly complex, interrelated, interconnected, and invisible ecosystems that have sustained indigenous peoples of the Arctic for centuries and form the basis of our way of life and world perspective, including spiritual dimensions. When one is impacted, all are impacted. I don't think that anyone doesn't understand this in this room. I've become part of the Scientific Ethics Committee in Greenland in 2021. So we go and look at all biomedical research that's done in Greenland on humans, living humans, make sure that what was it Sila called it, the geese that come and took some sample and flew away. So we make sure that the geese don't come and fly away. I work at this hospital. I work a lot on autoimmune diseases, liver diseases, on infectious diseases, especially tuberculosis and HIV. And so I still travel around Greenland to see my patients, but mostly they come to Nuuk, or I'll actually call them over the phone across the country. Health in Greenland today. So what is health? It's a difficult question, but if I asked Google, and it said WHO said that a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So how do we get there? Or maybe how do I get there? Nothing new. Sailing back home, fishing with my family, being in the fjords, this we call the Blueberry Haven, hunting with my family, of course, and playing. Moreover, I love Greenlandic food, and my favorite dish is mattek. So this is what makes me happy, and I hope it also makes me healthy. I love traveling, which reminds me of just coming here. You have to fill in a form, and I'll just go through a few of the questions. Why are you coming to Canada? That is pretty easy. I'm attending a gathering or conference, okay? Do you have tuberculosis? Well, I treat maybe 50 patients a year, but no. And then this question, do you have syphilis? And now I become unsure of how much is expected of me in a 3-day stay. So now further, if we look at, health in Greenland from a more general perspective, a report came out here last year, and reading through it, there's 356 pages long, and it sheds light on all the most important parts of the health sector and presents a total of more than 100 recommendations for improvements and adaptations on the basis of the existing financial space. So therefore they say that the recommendations express what can realistically be done and implemented financially. And now I will present all the different No, I will not. But I have to present some of them. They say, I've been working there for 14 years. Now they say the Greenland healthcare system is under historic pressure. Yeah. It's a burning platform. Okay. Great and critical problems on retainment and recruitment on all health staff, you name. Yeah. Lack of bilingual staff. At the same time, public expectations and demand for healthcare services are increasing. talk about social inequality, steadily rising, healthcare costs, lack of sports facilities, a food culture with a high intake of imported foods. Still major problems regarding suicide, obesity, smoking, alcohol, social problems, and child abuse. So they wish for that we strengthen our sex education, better governance and cooperation between the municipalities and health service to promote rehabilitation, as well as to improve the overview of the economy. And also clarity on contact options in case of suicidal thoughts. There's a focus on telemedicine still. And also they talk about inclusion of cultural differences. And also this part where you want to, target people to come home after they end their education. As Abby said also, it's difficult to get people home when they become, nurses or doctors or whatever. They want to establish a multidisciplinary health council. Many in the group know these words better than me, but I present them today. So you will be enlightened if you're reading this, looking at it at a general scale, but you'll also know that there are no easy solutions. And just listening to the elders talking, Sheila said this morning, there's no doubt that the Western health system put down on the population has many, many benefits, but it also has its limitations. And that's some of them that I also want to present. Being a doctor in Greenland, you can think of something and say, let's go. And then in reality, you'd say, let's not, we can't. Moreover, the local newspaper said 14 days ago, there's no ice to hunt from in the northern part of Greenland. And in the beginning of January, there was plus 10 degrees when it's usually like minus 15 in Nuuk. So there's something changing, and maybe it's getting out of hand. And, what do I tell my son? He's growing up. He wants to hunt too. I think I want to be a little bit happy, so I think I'll take some medic. The easy part, you can reach most of Greenland by telephone, and telemedicine is the way forward. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel. So working in Greenland, one of my colleagues said, Karsten, do you know that working in Greenland at general practice, you are approximately 50% general practitioner, 25% emergency physician, 10% psychiatrist, and psychologist, and 5% psychiatrist, 20% gynecologist, 5% surgeon, 5% eye doctor, and 5% throat and ear doctor. And she even left out the pediatrician part. But thank you, Charlotte, for this. That adds up to about 125%. And she said, and that's actually just exactly how it feels. Yeah. So it can be very diverse working in Greenland. Yeah, as you said, as I said on the last slide. And a few examples, just look at what we do. After doing resuscitation on one patient, I will go back sweaty to my next patient who wants to talk about stress at work. Yeah. Or treating convulsive seizures on a patient because of a probable cerebral hemorrhage, talking to his near family about the problem and that he might not survive. And then 5 minutes later, going to the next patient, talking about the annoying skin rash on her little finger. So you have to adapt pretty quickly mentally to be where your patient is. Or, being woken, you are supposed to have some free time, but then you get, called during the night by the ones who actually have the shift because you have to help them out with some complicated childbirth. So you have to know if you want to work in Greenland, you cannot just be an island. You need to work with us. You need help. Also, a very important thing is, people in Greenland, they're generally very, very grateful people. Yeah. So I think it's a fact. It's much easier to explain things in your first language if you're ill, afraid, frustrated, or hurt. To know the language, the customs, the taboos, the country geography, and the capability in every region gives you a great advantage in some instances. And also the perception of disease can be different according to language and culture. You know some. Things are often explained in pictures in Greenland and by a long, long story. Feelings are situated in the body while thoughts in your brain. My heart aches. Is it a pain in your chest? Or are you heartbroken? I hear droplets running down on this side of my head and feel them too. It can be very difficult to explain this in medical terms. Now to something else. Ghost stories. Everyone in Greenland believes in ghosts. Everyone, almost. So nothing is better than ghost stories or dog stories. So if you have trouble finding your place, just raise your hand and proclaim, you know what? I know this very chilling ghost stories that will give you the goosebumps, and everyone will turn to you immediately and just love you. So it can be a gift coming from the same place. It can give like an even starting point, both for patient contact and to the contact between other local health professionals. But, sometimes problems do not get better even though you are the indigenous doctor. And not all patients want us. Some people need other doctors or healers for their well-being. A foreign health professional also sometimes can be more relaxing to some patients. Give an appointment to the Greenlandic speaking doctor is not always the solution to the patient's problems. We are in this together. The local communities can be very small, like here, and for some health professionals and patients, too small. If you did not like your community as a kid, there's a very little chance you want to go back then as an adult when you're educated. The divide between your professional life and your private life can be sometimes very hard to distinguish. The doctor's code, as I'll explain later, is sometimes the most fantastic way to handle this. You will at some point treat your family members and your colleagues, and in time, your colleagues will treat you. Your patients are also the ones that fixes your house, fixes your car, and also look out for your children at daycare. And they know all about your family. Yes. So you slowly build up trust by hard work. If you're not careful in what you say or do or what your colleagues say about you, it can easily ruin your life in the small communities. Also, social media is not always your friend. As Avya said, are you even a real Greenland? So people say, you haven't even seen a real polar bear, Karsten. And I say, of course I have. That's not true. I've seen them many times at the local zoo in Denmark. And sometimes my patients will say, also said, mumble, 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 Karsten, you do not speak Greenlandic that well. Or you take all these strange dialects and put them into this strange, crazy mix. Yes, true. I'm not sure if people understand this, but I'm fluent in Elvish and Wookiee and Stata, and it will not help me here. I would have preferred if you were a female, middle-aged Danish doctor. Okay? Or you might not be Greenlandic enough for me, and you know the answer? You know what? I know this chilling ghost story that will give you the... But what can you do? So from an economical point of view, it's not an attractive alternative to move to Greenland to work as a doctor and nurse. But many really want to come and see our nature. Sounds familiar? So I'll just say, there are 100 physician work positions in Greenland, and half of them are tenure. And there are 300 nurse positions, and only 100 are tenure. And I think it's much less today than it was when I looked it up a few years ago. So it leaves a lot of work to the ones that actually there. Fortunately, some do come to work with us, but unfortunately, I'm not a very good tour guide. So they would ask me, which whales do they hunt around here? And I'll say, the tasty ones, I think. Or, where can you go and have something to eat? Sea? It's much better to ask the local tourist office guide. Because everyone almost comes and goes and comes and goes and leaves. It's sometimes difficult to actually use a lot of energy on new relations. Shamanism and healing is mostly well looked upon back home. So if your patient went to you for treatment, got treated, and the problem went away, don't be too upset if the patient says they went to this healer and they solved the problem, because you often don't really know what the causal pathway is to their well-being. So I have a few stories from the field of thing 7, and I'm sorry, I have no ghost stories. But the first story is a few years old, the extra accessory. One day I had used everything I had in me in a very hard 24-hour shift at a local hospital in Sisimiut. And so this fantastic assistant who had helped me during the whole night came to me the next morning and she said, Karsten, go to your office. Before you continue your daytime work today, please go to your office. I have placed a present for you. So I went back to my office and this was lying there. I think, what is that? What was that? It was a Greenlandic she had made for me, a Greenlandic drum. And I think partly it was for the fun of it, but maybe she looked at me and also saw the limitations in my work. So she had made this priceless Greenland made out of a disposable glove, a one-time vomit bag, and a one-time rectoscope. So, but you know what? I think it was just what I had been missing, and it can be right in my left pocket beside my stethoscope. You have heard this a little bit also, but we also hear this at home. One day, a father came to me with his little 4-year-old daughter at general practice. After we finished the consultation in Greenlandic, the father looked at his daughter and said, "See, no foreign doctor came to take you away." I guess they hear all kinds of strange old stories at kindergarten, but maybe not that old here. Yeah. A lady had chronic back problems for over 15 years, and now it had become so painful that she couldn't no longer work or sleep. So we invited her to Nuuk. I had a long talk with her. We talked about her symptoms, how she was doing her x-rays, and I examined her. Next step, I said, would be an MRI scan before talking to the spine surgeons in Denmark. So she went home to her local community, and later she came back to Nuuk for her MRI and talked to one of my colleagues. She was sent home, and I asked my colleague, "Why did you send her home before her scan?" And my colleague said, "Well, the patient said that the last doctor she saw in Nuuk had examined her and healed her, so no scan was necessary, and all she wanted was to go back home and work again." And I thought, I need a raise, but also I'm so happy for her. So you might call it a miracle, or just, Unfortunately, this only happens like in 1 in 350 of my chronic back patients. But anyway, I cannot make a living out of it, and I lost my drum. But it still counts, and there's room for improvement. So, at night at the surgical ward. Now, in one of my shifts, I was called to the ward as a family member of a dying man wanted the doctor to come. On that same day, one of my close family members was very ill and hospitalized. Death was unavoidable. This was the man they wanted the doctor to see. And there I was. I left my doctor's coat in the room. I took my stethoscope out of my pocket and listened to his heartbeat. It was silent. I looked into his eyes and found that he had left us. I told my family in the room what I had found. I took my doctor's coat off and left it in the corner of the room. Then we did the traditional singing to the departed. I stayed for a while. I put on my doctor's coat and went back to work. And then it's time for some more medtech, I think. Yeah. At some point, I worked with cancer patients and chemotherapy. And this old lady I was supposed to treat said, so I might have only months left to live, even if I get treated. I use 3 days to come here, sometimes more if the weather is bad. I get the chemotherapy, and then sometimes I wait days before I can come home again. And then I come back to you. I think I'd rather use this time with my grandchildren. And one day at my brother's house, I went to my brother's house to visit him and his wife and his son and daughter. My nephew, age 9, and I went to this serious talk about Spider-Man and Batman and Iron Man, and all these superheroes, and which one we liked the most. As we were talking, my nephew said that he had had the same conversation with one of his friends not that long ago, and his friend went to the same school as he did. His friend had said that his favorite superhero, was my nephew's uncle. Okay. And I asked with a smile, why is that? And my nephew replied that it was because he had saved his life. And then I said, wow, I might not be the quickest, but after this life-affirming talk, I sat with this deep thought. Can I now, by any chance, put superhero on my CV? Yeah. So, now this is not my story, but I think it's a cool one. Uga, my colleague, an old man in the village got an echocardiography, a scan of the heart, from one of my Greenlandic colleagues, Uga. As he was lying in bed, he looks into the screen where he can see his heart beating through the ultrasound and then asks, in my long life, I have hunted seals, caribou, walruses, polar bears, and whales. Until now, I have never seen a beating heart. And here, for the first time, I see it. And it's my own. And then he asks, I love my family, and I have loved my wife since we met 50 years ago, and I love her still. Dear doctor, can you please show me on that screen where in my heart love lies? So some closing words. Good advice before you come to work in Greenland or, maybe anywhere, just come and stay. No matter who you are or where you're from, be humble, be kind. And what was it? Show respect. Come without prejudice. Don't look down on yourself. And the risk of having a fantastic time in Greenland could be highly probable. My quality of life or well-being, mostly, like many other health professionals, I save quality of life. But by working in Greenland or living in Greenland, I think I also save my own quality of life and my well-being. So there's an evidence, and I brought it. This is how my family looks when we go to Disneyland in Paris. And this is how we look back in Sisimiut when we go skiing in Greenland. Thank you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We're almost into the coffee break, but since we have this Greenlandic hour, I just wanted to give a couple of more from our Greenlandic group the chance of sharing some perspective. So, Nikki Bertelsen, or you want Anak? We'll let the women go first. Anak, Patricia Block, what do you want to share?
Thank you so much for being here. It's very nice to be in Iqaluit, and 2 hours flight was really amazing. I am so proud of you guys. It's so empowering. Listen to all your perspectives, and congratulations with the biology program. And it really warmed my heart when you talk a lot about our youth, giving them opportunity to feeling safe, being home, and taking education. That is something I think it's very big time value. Yeah, that's my first perspective, and I will give the word to
Qoyanami siullormi maanissinnagattam taavalu utoqqaatusornaarluit iluarpo inutoqqat tusarnaarlu iluarpo isumaat pingaartu pilussuus malunnarpo. Oh, hello. Oh, I just want to say thanks and to the elders.
No, internet.
I'll try again. Hello. Yes. Listen to the elders has made some inspiration for me because Karsten's talk about the 117 health commission projects, I will call them projects, we have to do. We have to take the culture into it too. So listen to the elders and their way of telling what they used to live. We have to think about that too. Inspiration from those two is great too. But I think in the future, I hope we can learn between countries more, Nunavut, Nunavik, and Greenland, because we have the same background, but we don't use it between the countries right now. So we need to do that more.
Yes, and I would like to also address the when you, Aviaya, when you told us the curriculum and how you think the Sila using nature in the program, it was very inspiring. From what I see, I researched in suicide prevention in my homeland in Qaujigiartiit among Inuit, and unfortunately there, just like the same here, we lose a lot of our youth to suicide for the past many years, and that impacts us a lot. So I'm very passionate about promoting self-worth among our youth. So when you talk about the curriculum, having these examples, this Caribbean hunting, that can also lead to self-worth, and also this tension about the language. It really makes me like this feeling of you being Indigenous scientist, you know your culture, you know what we need, and you know also how we can empower each other. And it makes me so happy and hopeful that that will lead to something good. And with your Karsten, I haven't laughed so much since ever since we flew together. And I really like when you're talking about being Indigenous doctor. We don't have many Indigenous representing us in science or also in a medical doctor. So very nice to hear the voices of yours and inspiring. Just you use the stories. You use, you know, I could have a really good sense of feeling of your presentation. And I think we should represent ourselves a lot more in these gatherings because it really makes sense. I haven't heard Indigenous doctor representing a presentation. It's first time I hear and that come from you. And it makes me so happy when you say the language has a matter, the culture has a matter, and people express their illness by long stories. It's really folding out the stories, the life story. Sometimes stories lead to that pain you have in your neck causes something else. So very inspiring. I just would like to say, yeah, thank you.